Michael Abbott.
Present.
Brad Johnson. Christine Chung.
Present.
Franklin Heck.
Present.
Brad Johnson.
Present.
Mangling Chow.
Present.
Kristen Proud.
Present.
And Kenneth Tompkins.
Present.
Great, thank you all. I will now do a roll call of our member designees. Kevin Eunice, Chief Operating Officer of Empire State Development, and he's the designee of the Chief Executive Officer of Empire State Development.
Kevin's not on the line as of yet.
Okay. Dr. Todd Larson, Senior Vice Chancellor and Provost of the State University of New York, who is the designee of the Chancellor of the State University of New York.
Yes, I'm here. Hello, everybody.
Hello, Todd. I will do a roll call of the officers who are participating in the meeting. Dr. Doug Gross.
Present.
Patricia Arciero Craig.
Present.
Paul Kelly.
Present.
Scott Bateman.
Present.
Timothy Taylor.
Present.
And Patricia Butler.
Present.
And a roll call of the other participants in the meeting. Monica Conley.
Present.
John Schofer.
Present.
Barry Valentinson.
Present.
Martin Dunbar.
Present.
Marvin Marcus.
Present.
Arlene Douglas.
Present.
Robert Ryan.
Present.
We also have Keith Palmer representing the Research Foundation.
Thank you. Again, I would like to remind everyone to please put their phones on mute because we're getting some background noise. Now I'd like to go through the potential conflict of interest statement. So if the directors, if anyone has any potential conflict of interest with respect to the items on today's agenda, if so, please make appropriate disclosure on the record now and recuse yourself from any discussion or vote with regard to that item. Hearing none, no potential conflicts were declared. Now I would like to request approval of the minutes from February 13, 2020 meeting. So I'm asking for a motion to approve the minutes of NYCH meeting of February 13, 2020.
It's Kristen Proud. I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Kristen. I'd like a second, please.
Franklin Heck, I'll second.
Thank you, Franklin. So the minutes are approved.
But we should ask for a roll call vote.
Oh, sorry, yes. So if anyone has any items to discuss or changes that they would request to make, please let us know. If not, I'd like to vote on the minutes. All those who approve the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any?
Aye.
Thank you. Any nays or comments?
Okay.
Minutes are approved. Thank you.
Bhagat, if we could interrupt,
yes.
Given the nature of the teleconference proceedings, if we could ask that each director identify themselves with their vote, if we could go one by one. Starting with.
So I believe the suggestion is that we ask each director to identify themselves and vote.
Yes, I can read off the names if you like. Michael Abbott,
Yes.
Christine Chung,
Aye.
Franklin Heck,
Aye.
Mengling Chao,
Yes.
Brad Johnson,
Yes.
Kristen Proud,
Aye.
Bagat,
Yes.
and Ken Tompkins.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I would now like to introduce Kristen Proud, Chair of the Finance Committee, to give the Finance Committee report.
Thank you, Dr. Samakia. The first item from the Finance Committee today is FRMC Resolution number 166, authorization for the Fuller Road Management Corporation corporate debt refinancing. At this time, I would ask for a motion to consider and adopt resolution number 166, authorizing the Fuller Road Management Corporation corporate debt refinancing. Could I have a motion?
Is Brad
So
down?
moved.
Yes.
Brad, I heard you make the motion. Is there a second, please?
Ken, second.
Thank you, Ken. So I'll provide some background before I turn it over. As set forth in the materials that were provided to the board in advance of this meeting, the Fuller Road Management Corporation has approximately $334,664,089 as of April 29, 2020, in outstanding principal debt, of which approximately $259,933,422 is scheduled to either mature or has a mandatory tender date in early May of this year. We'll refer to this as the prior indebtedness. On December 20th, 2019, the corporation, subsequent to completing a competitive procurement process and receiving concurrence to the Evaluation Committee's recommendation from the Finance Committee, selected a proposal for the repayment of all or a portion of the corporation's prior indebtedness from Goldman Sachs & Company, LLC, subject to the board's approval of all definitive documents necessary for implementation of this transaction. This transaction contemplates the issuance of fixed-rate taxable municipal bonds in an amount not to exceed $350 million by the New York Transportation Development Corporation. This is the Lease Revenue Refunding Bonds Series 2020. The proceeds of such issuance to be loaned to the corporation for the purpose of defeasing or redeeming all or a portion of the prior indebtedness and to pay the cost of issuance, the Series 2020 bonds. These Series 2020 bonds are structured to fully amortize over a 15-year term with debt service payments capped at $35 million in fiscal year 2021, $40 million through fiscal year 2029, and $7 million through fiscal year 2035. As all of you know, sadly, this has been a very turbulent week, and the market is changing not only day by day, but literally hour by hour. Marvin Marcus from Goldman Sachs is on the call today and will tell us more about the market conditions generally, as well as further describe the proposed transaction. Given the rapidly changing conditions, staff is currently pursuing an alternative path with the existing lenders in the event that the proposed transaction that we're talking about now is delayed. Such alternative, of course, would be reviewed for approval by the board. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Marvin Marcus from Goldman Sachs.
Sure. Hi, it's Marvin Marcus. If you take a look at the PowerPoint that was sent earlier this week with the agenda, as was just said by your chair, the plan of finance is to refinance all your outstanding debt, which consists of both the debt that comes due or subject to mandatory tender in early May, the 2005 outstanding bonds, and also your line of credit. In addition, you have some interest rate swaps associated with all your bank debt, and to terminate those swaps and also pay the cost of issues. What is this? The security? The security is solely the lease revenue from the Research Foundation. The Research Foundation has two leases with you. one of which was entered into in approximately 2011. That lease provides for $36 million of annual rental payments between now and 2028. There's an additional approximately $7.1 million payment that is made pursuant to a lease entered into in 2005. That lease expires in 2035. Taking those revenues and the fact that it's solely secured by these revenues, this is a structured financing that works around the cash flow created by those leases. As indicated by the chair, there's a limitation that the corporation wants to make sure to have some excess cash above the total of about $43 million lease payments. So we've limited the debt service to $35 million in this fiscal year and $40 million beyond that, and then whatever's left over will amortize between 2028 and 2030. You see most of that on our first page. Turning to the next page, you can get a sense of the cash flow that I just described. So you get significant cash flow between now and 2028, and then it goes down fairly significantly. We have received from the rating agency, from Standard & Poor's, a rating of A+, which is the rating we expected. That is based largely on the fact that, based solely on the fact of the Research Foundation, and it was based on the same outstanding rating on the existing 2005 bonds that are on, as I said, are outstanding. The third page indicates sort of the expected debt service shape in today's market. Not actually today's market, when this slide was put together. Let me comment on the market. As indicated by the chair, the market has found is the subject of considerable volatility, certainly within the last two weeks. And the expectation is that that volatility will continue to some degree. The municipal market has had its share of ups and downs in that particular volatility. And to give you a sense of the current schedule, your board meeting is right now, and the expectation is that you will might approve this transaction. The Transportation Development Corporation board is scheduled for Monday morning at some point. They are waiting for you to approve, and then they will approve the transaction. The expectation is that the transaction will be posted. By posted, we mean it will be available on the internet either late Monday, most likely Tuesday, in addition to the offering document, which we call preliminary offering statement, or a POS. In addition to POS, which is going to be posted, there will also be posted a roadshow, a slide version of the credit and the project. The expectation was, and hopefully we can stick to the schedule, that it'll take approximately a week for investors to understand the transaction, and that we would be able to price it late March or early April. As indicated before, your date in which you have to provide the funds to the banks is early May. In one case, May 1, in another case, May 8. So there is a window of approximately 2.5, 3 weeks during which we can execute the transaction. So the current expectation, to recap, is to post early next week, let's say Tuesday, price the following week, but also understand that it may slip, and then the next 2 weeks are available to us. As indicated in the opening by the chair, the staff has talked to the existing lenders, and there's a process underway to provide for a possible extension of the debt in the event that the market is not receptive to this particular transaction. I've covered a lot, and I'd be happy to answer any additional questions. I would ask Tricia that is what you expected us to say.
Thank you, Marvin.
This is Brad Johnson. Am I on?
Yes.
I can't tell if I'm moved. Okay.
Yeah.
Will there be a process of keeping us posted on the marketing, and is there a drop dead date where we have to look at the alternative and go back to the current lenders? And how long would it take to execute an extension of the loans and the debt agreements with the current lenders?
Let me answer the drop dead date. The drop dead date would be approximately 7 days before May 1, so April 23rd, let's say, in terms of the market execution. Because it would take approximately a week, maybe a little less, to close the transaction. I'll turn it over to Trish, I guess, who could take you through the discussions with the banks.
Yes, this is Trish Craig. To answer your first question, Brad, yes, we will provide updates through the marketing period. And as to the alternative that staff is pursuing, we are in discussions now and believe that within a week's time, we would need to make a decision. We would first need to get the details of the any proposal, and within a week's time, we would need to choose that path, which we would bring back to the board and the finance committee when the details are worked out.
So can you hear me again? I can't. No.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So can we, is it practical, reasonable to wait until April 23rd to have serious discussions with the banks about the closing of their agreements? Does that give us enough time?
No, we would be engaging in those discussions between now and the next week in terms of that proposal and then what would ensue in terms of a process.
Somebody has their phone in a weird position. Is it possible to execute an agreement with the banks, pay them a fee in advance in the event would they actually foreclose on us if we don't close? I'm just trying to understand the level of risk of the market going continually south, and we're left with, we certainly don't want to default on any of these obligations. So is there, as an insurance policy, could we pay the banks a fee to get them to agree to close to refinance within before the loans become due and work out arrangements in advance?
We are engaging in those discussions in real time, Brad, and trying to work through proceeding on a parallel path so that we don't reach that point.
Right. So, but I understand that. I'm just curious to know if we could. Are you discussing a possible payment to them to give us some cushion on the timing?
Yes, that would be part of the alternative, would be the payment of fees, etc.
And the payment of those fees would have to be approved by the board?
Yes. So
could we deal with all the issues before the board today, but then maybe in 2 weeks, if there's still uncertainty in the market and we get a sense it may be a problem, could we reconvene the board and approve the payment in advance of the April 23rd as an insurance?
We would be.
Does that make any sense? I don't know. I'm just asking.
Yes, we would be.
We can certainly consider that.
Yes.
I'm just worried about, everybody's doing a great job, but nobody on the phone has control of the markets. And as great a job as everybody's doing, I just worry about, in this environment, some unforeseen circumstances putting us in default.
We are engaging in those discussions, Brad, in real time, and we will be back to the board in days. It would be well before 2 weeks.
Okay, great.
So we'll call an ad hoc meeting to approve a deal as soon as it's clear, right?
Correct. We would convene a finance committee meeting at the time, followed by a board meeting when we have an alternative to present.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure.
This is Christine Chung. I'm wondering if we could have an update on potentially getting insurance. I know we had spoken previously about the possibility of a credit enhancement in the form of insurance as a possibility. There was still perhaps one carrier in the market. Maybe Goldman could update us on whether that still might be available, and if so, whether you think it's advisable.
Yeah, let me go to the availability. Discussions have been started with the insurer still in the market. They have received all the background documentation on the transaction, and they are looking at it. They, like everybody else, are working from home, and they use committee process. Not exactly sure where they are, but we do expect some answer, I'd say next week, as to whether or not they're interested. The reason we're pursuing that is to, one, you normally pursue insurance in order to net the insurance premium to save on the interest rate, and that is still something that, of course, we would look at. But also, it is possible that the market might open for insured paper and might not open for a transaction that is rated below AA, and they are rated AA minus, where your rating is A+. Under normal circumstances, it would be likely that we would not need insurance, but we're making, as Trish indicated, we're going along a great many tracks. The conventional track, I'll call it, the insurance track, and Trish and staff are going along the bank. Trish staff and the financial advisor are going along the bank route. So yes, we don't have an update. We certainly will let staff know when we've heard back from the insurance carrier, and they could certainly let you know where we are. Again, well, not again, but we would not be utilizing the insurance until we actually were ready to do the transaction. We would talk to investors. Would you prefer insurance, et cetera, just to explain this transaction. As you can see from the numbers that we provide, this is in terms of the structure, meaning the cash flow structure, which is based on monetizing the existing leases, and therefore there's no choice but to create a structure like this. This is not necessarily what the market is looking for right now in terms of structure, because there are lots of pieces, if you will, as opposed to one single bond that would have liquidity. So that's also one of our issues right now in this particular market. So even if the market opens up for certain kinds of taxable municipal issuers, it is not clear whether or not the market would open up for this particular structure away from the credit. That's one of the reasons we're pursuing insurance.
Do any of the committee members have any other questions for Marvin? Okay. Then at this time, I'd like to introduce John Schopfer from Public Resources Advisory Group, and he's going to lead us in a discussion of compliance with the Fuller Road Management Corporation debt management policy. John?
Thank you very much, Pat. This is John Schopfer. Public Resources Advisory Group, whom I represent, has been advising the corporation for several years. The corporation has a pre-existing debt management policy, which we reviewed and found to be standard, sound, and complete. It requires, of course, that the corporation pay attention when it's determining its need for debt to its budgetary capabilities for debt service. The plan also has certain goals of minimizing costs and risk while maximizing flexibility and avoiding short-term debt where possible. And of course, its goal is to achieve reasonable rates and fees subject to market conditions. As set forth in the memo that was part of your package, in the context of this transaction, we participated in the procurement of Goldman Sachs and the subsequent structuring and documentation of the transaction, which is in front of you. And we found that this transaction, if executed as presented, would in fact comply completely with the debt policy that we found to be in place for the corporation. Thank you very much.
Does anyone have any questions for John? Okay, are there any other questions or comments from any of the other board members at this time? All right, then just to summarize, the Finance Committee approved a resolution one, approving and authorizing the transaction, including the engagement of Goldman Sachs as senior managing underwriter, the engagement of digital assurance certification for SEC Rule 15C2-12 compliance services, the use of bond insurance, the indenture, the amendment and restatements of the lease agreements, the preliminary official statement, the distribution and use of the preliminary official statement and official statement by the underwriter, and the termination of interest rate swap agreements. 2, authorizing the execution and delivery of the bond purchase agreement, loan agreement, note, assignment of rents, continuing disclosure agreement, official statement, and any other document now or hereafter executed by the corporation. Collectively, these are known as the corporation documents, in connection with undertaking this transaction. And 3, recommending that the full board approve these same actions. So at this time, I would ask that we vote on resolution number 166, which approves and authorizes the same actions in connection with the transaction as approved by the Finance Committee. Since we're on the phone, I will ask each director for his or her vote on the motion to adopt resolution number 166, starting with Michael Abbott.
I vote yes in favor.
Thank you. Christine Chung.
Aye.
Franklin Hecht.
Aye.
Thank you. Ming Ming.
Aye.
Brad Johnson.
Aye.
Dr. Samakia.
Aye.
Ken Tompkins.
Aye.
Thank you, and I'd like to be recorded in the affirmative as well.
Mike Frayne joined the call, and I also vote aye.
Thank you very much, Mike. Okay, so the ayes have it, and the motion is approved. We will now move on to FRMC Resolution number 167 and FSMC Resolution number 189. I'm bringing these up at the same time, although we will have separate votes on each of them since they deal with the same issue, and that is the authorization for signatories for corporate depository account transactions. I'd like to ask for a motion to consider and adopt FRMC Resolution number 167, authorizing signatories for FRMC corporate depository account transactions. Can I have a motion, please?
Motion, Ken.
Thank you. Second?
Second, Franklin.
Thank you, Franklin. And also at this time, I would ask for a motion to consider and adopt FSMC Resolution number 189, also authorizing signatories for FSMC corporate depository account transactions. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a
Franklin.
motion? Thank you, Franklin. A second?
Brad Johnson, second.
Thank you, Brad. So by FRMC Resolution number 151 and FSMC Resolution number 176, the Fuller Road Management Corporation and Fort Schuyler Management Corporation boards of directors appointed Dr. Douglas A. Gross as president of the respective corporations and as a signatory to transactions drawn against the accounts of the corporation. To assure the efficient operation of business, FRMC and FSMC now seek to appoint its Chief Financial Officer, Timothy Taylor, and its Treasurer, Scott Bateman, each as a signatory to transactions drawn against the deposit accounts of the corporation. They will be referred to as the signatories. The signatories shall have the power and authority set forth in the resolutions numbers 167 and 189 that were in the materials previously sent to you. The Finance Committee met, discussed and approved resolution number 167 and FSMC resolution number 189, appointing the Chief Financial Officer Timothy Taylor and Treasurer Scott Bateman, each as a signatory to transactions drawn against the accounts of FRMC and FSMC respectively, granting the signatories the power and authority stated in the respective resolutions, and we now recommend that the board approve these same actions. So the requested actions are: 1, approve FRMC resolution number 167, appointing the Chief Financial Officer Timothy Taylor and Treasurer Scott Bateman, each as a signatory to transactions drawn against the deposit account of FRMC, and granting the signatories the power and authority stated in the resolution. And 2, approve FSMC resolution number 189, which appoints the Chief Financial Officer Timothy Taylor and Treasurer Scott Bateman, each as a signatory to transactions drawn against the deposit account or accounts of the FSMC, and granting the signatories the power and authority stated in the resolution. At this time, I'd like to open it up for any questions or comments from any of the board members. Okay. Hearing none, I will ask each director individually for his or her vote on the motion first to adopt resolution number 167, which relates to the FRMC signatories. We'll start with Michael Abbott.
I vote yes.
Christine Chung.
Aye.
Franklin Hecht. Franklin.
Phone might be muted.
Thank you. Ming Ling.
Aye.
Brad Johnson.
Aye.
Dr. Samakia.
Aye.
Ken Tompkins.
Aye.
Mike Frame.
Aye.
And I'm also to be recorded in the affirmative. So the ayes have it, and resolution number 167 is adopted. Now we'll move on to resolution number 189, which relates to the FSMC signatories. Michael Abbott.
I vote yes.
Thank you. Christine Chung.
Aye.
Franklin Hecht.
Yes.
Meng Ling.
Aye.
Brad Johnson.
Aye.
Dr. Samakia.
Aye.
Ken Tompkins.
Aye.
Mike Frame.
Aye.
And I'd also like to be recorded in the affirmative, so the ayes have it, and resolution number 189 is adopted. We now have a couple of lease amendments. The first is an FRMC lease amendment related to IBM. If I could have a motion to consider and approve this lease amendment.
Moved, Ken.
Thank you, Ken. A second, please.
Second, Franklin.
Thank you, Franklin. Just by way of background, IBM, as you all know, a worldwide leader in information technology, computer science, and high-tech research, currently leases 61,311 square feet of office and laboratory space in the NanoFab East building and 1,900 square feet of lab space in NFS. IBM is now seeking to lease an additional 7,405 square feet of office space in NFE adjacent to the space that it currently leases for a term beginning April 1, 2020 through December 31, 2023, with an option to further extend for 5 years. Rent will be $35 per square foot plus operating expenses and utilities for the new space and for the adjacent space of 6,256 square feet. IBM will have use of the office furniture and equipment in the new space. The rent will continue to increase by 3% annually. The proposed lease represents a small fraction of the total building, therefore an appraisal of the fair market value of the asset is not practical. Staff has determined that this lease meets fair market value based upon other existing leases in the building. There will be no cost to FRMC for site preparation for the additional space. The Finance Committee earlier this week met and approved a resolution, 1, authorizing approval of the 8th Amendment of the lease with IBM under the terms described previously, and 2, authorizing the President and the Treasurer, each of them without the other, to take such actions, including without limitation, to approve, sign, acknowledge, and deliver the 8th Amendment to IBM in such form as either of such officers may deem appropriate, as are necessary to effectuate the resolution, and 3, recommending that the Board of Directors approve the same action. So the action being requested at this time is approval of a resolution authorizing the approval of the 8th Amendment of the lease with IBM under the terms described above, and authorizing the President and the Treasurer, each of them without the other, to take such actions, including without limitation, to approve, sign, acknowledge, and deliver the 8th Amendment to IBM in such form as either of them may deem appropriate, as are necessary to effectuate the resolution. At this time, I would open it up for any questions or comments from board members. Okay, hearing none, I will now take a roll call vote on the motion to approve the lease amendment with IBM as described above. Michael Abbott?
I vote yes.
Thank you. Christine Chung? Aye. Franklin Heck?
Aye.
Meng Ling?
Aye.
Brad Johnson?
Aye.
Dr. Samaskia?
Aye.
Ken Tompkins?
Aye.
Mike Frame?
Aye.
And I'd also like to be recorded in the affirmative, so the ayes have it and the resolution is adopted. The second lease amendment is related to the National Weather Service of the U.S. Department of Commerce National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, commonly known as the National Weather Service. So at this time, I'd like to ask for a motion to consider the lease amendment.
I'll make the motion, Franklin.
Thank you, Franklin. Thank you.
Who seconded?
By way of background, in 1997, the National Weather Service entered into a 20-year lease with FRMC for 6,800 square feet of office space in CSTEM, plus rooftop space for related work and parking. Its lease was extended by Supplemental Agreement Number 1 in 2017 for a period of 3 years. The National Weather Service is now seeking to extend its lease through Supplemental Agreement Number 2 for an additional 2 years, which would take the lease through April 15, 2022. The Weather Service will pay $24.68 per square foot, including utilities and parking. This represents a 3% increase from the previous year. The proposed lease represents a small fraction of the total building. Therefore, an appraisal of the fair market value of the asset was deemed not to be practical. Staff has determined that this lease meets fair market value based on other existing leases in the building. At its last meeting, the Finance Committee approved a resolution, 1, authorizing approval of Supplemental Agreement Number 2 to the lease with the National Weather Service under the terms I just described. 2, authorizing the President and the Treasurer, each of them without the other, to take such actions, including without limitation, to approve, sign, acknowledge, and deliver the amendment in such form as either of them may deem appropriate, as are necessary to effectuate the resolution. And 3, recommending that the Board approve the same action. So at this time, to summarize, the action being requested is approval of a resolution authorizing approval of supplemental agreement number 2 to the lease with the National Weather Service under the terms described above, and authorizing the president and the treasurer, each of them without the other, to take such actions, including without limitation, to approve, sign, acknowledge, and deliver the amendment in such form as either of them may deem appropriate, as are necessary to effectuate this resolution. I'll now go down the roll and ask each director for a vote on the motion to approve the lease amendment with the National Weather Service. Starting with Michael Abbott.
Yes.
Christine Chung.
Aye.
Franklin Hecht.
Yes.
Meng Ling.
Aye.
Brad Johnson.
Aye.
Dr. Samakia.
Aye.
Ken Tompkins.
Aye.
Mike Frame.
Aye.
And I'd also like to be recorded in the affirmative. The ayes have it, and the resolution is adopted. The final lease amendment this meeting from the Finance Committee relates to Albany Valve and Fitting Company, Inc. If I could have a motion to consider and approve a lease amendment with the Albany Valve and Fitting Company.
I'll make the motion, Franklin.
Thanks, Franklin. Second, please.
Second, Ken.
Thank you, Ken. Albany Valve is a fluid system provider for various industries, including the semiconductor industry. It seeks to lease 407 square feet of office space in NFE for 2 years with an option to extend for 2 one-year terms beyond that. The tenant will pay $32 per square foot, including operating expenses and utilities. The tenant will also have use of office furniture and will pay for parking. The proposed lease represents a small fraction of the total building, and therefore an appraisal of the fair market value of the asset is not practical. Staff has determined that this lease meets fair market value based on other existing leases in the building. At its last meeting, the Finance Committee approved a resolution that 1, authorizes approval of the lease with Albany Valve under the terms described above. 2, authorizes the president and the treasurer, each of them without the other, to take such actions, including without effectuate the resolution. And 3, recommends that the board of directors approve the same action. So the action being requested is approval of a resolution authorizing the approval of the lease with Albany Valve under the terms described above, and authorizing the president and the treasurer, each of them without the other, to take such actions, including without limitation, to approve, sign, acknowledge, and deliver the lease to Albany Valve in such form as either of them may deem appropriate, as are necessary to effectuate the resolution. At this point, I'll stop and open it up for any questions or comments from any of the board members. Right. Hearing none, then we'll move on to vote on the resolution, starting with Michael Abbott.
I vote yes.
Christine Chung.
Aye.
Franklin Hecht.
Yes.
Meng Ling.
Aye.
Brad Johnson.
Aye.
Dr. Samakia.
Aye.
Ken.
Aye.
Mike.
Aye.
And I'm also in the affirmative. So the ayes have it, and the resolution is adopted. I would now like to introduce Michael Abbott, Chair of the Audit Committee, to provide us with the Audit Committee report today.
Thank you. You have before you FRMC Resolution number 168 for the approval of the annual audit. I'd like to ask for a motion to consider and adopt Resolution number 168 approving. Hello?
Yes, Meng Ling, I make the motion.
Second?
I'll second it. It's Kristen.
Thank you. By way of background, pursuant to the bylaws of the corporation, the financial records and account of the organization shall be audited annually or at such other times as directed by the board of directors by a certified independent accounting firm designated for such purpose by the board of directors, and the board of directors shall review and approve the annual audit prior to submission to the appropriate agency and or government entity. 2018-19 annual audit was conducted and prepared by KPMG, a certified independent accounting firm designated for such purpose by the Board of Directors, and a draft audit was submitted to the Audit Committee. The Audit Committee approved the draft 2018-19 annual audit, subject to the conditional upon completion of the remaining administrative items discussed with the Audit Committee by management and the certified independent accounting firm, to the satisfaction of the chair of the Audit Committee, with the recommendation that the 18-19 annual audit be approved by the Board of Directors with the same condition. I'd like to ask for the board to approve the 2018 annual audit, subject to and conditional upon completion of the remaining administrative items discussed with the Audit Committee by management and a certified public accounting firm, to the satisfaction of the chair of the Audit Committee. At this point, I'd like to ask if there's any questions or discussion on the item. Okay. Hearing none, I will take a roll call for those in favor of resolution number 168. Franklin Heck?
Yes.
Brad Johnson?
Yes.
Meng Ling?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
Ken?
Aye.
Mike Frame?
Aye.
Dr. Samakia?
Aye.
I also would like to be recorded in the affirmative vote. Hearing all approvals, the motion is carried.
And I think we missed Christine.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, I vote aye as well.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you all. So I'd like to ask if there is any new business that anyone needs to introduce a motion for.
This is Brad Johnson. I don't have new business, but I'm sorry if I'm a little dense, but I'm still unclear about the contingency plan with the banks. As I understand it, the bonds have to be sold by April 23rd in order to close the transaction, transfer the funds to the trustee who pays our existing lenders. But there's a drop dead date before that with regard to getting the banks to give us financing in the event the bonds aren't sold. Now, I assume hopefully the bonds will be sold before the 23rd, maybe the first week of April, which would be great. But if they're not, I just want to be clear about the drop dead date for the contingent financing with the banks.
Brad, this is Doug Gross.
Okay.
We had a call with the banks this morning, so it's real time.
Okay.
They have not fully consummated their proposal, and we'll come back next week if we deem that we want to pursue a parallel path here. And they need, by April 1st, a proposal letter that would be signed. And we would then have to proceed down that path in parallel with, obviously, the placement of the bonds. They are overwhelmed, as they told us this morning, because of the market conditions, and probably need about 30 days in order to get the approvals necessary. So that's why we need to commit earlier than April 23rd, based on what we heard this morning.
Okay, so
we will come back to you next week as we get further clarification of the bank's proposal and terms, and update you with what we see before obviously moving forward with anything.
Okay, so the bond sale will substantially reduce our debt service, so that's critical. But is it? And the bonds may be sold after April 1, but what I'd like to do is work out a way where we commit to do the financing with the banks subject to our inability to get the bond financing. agree to everything they want to agree to, have them go through the process, pay them a fee, a breakage fee or some kind of fee if we don't go through with it because the bonds are sold. My question is that legally, practically possible?
We don't know. We'll work through those details and come back to you next week. Obviously, the banks are going to want a piece of the fee early if we do agree to a proposal letter on or around April 1st, and obviously beyond that to close that transaction. So we're trying to work those parallel paths out. We just don't know enough at this point.
Okay, so, but if we pay the fee, can we still not go forward with the bank financing if the bonds come through?
We don't know. We don't know the full terms that they would ask for in terms of that.
Yeah, so I would just ask that you raise it with them and see if that would be a possibility, because I'd hate to lose the bond transaction because the market's slow and we're closing at April 1 and we're not leaving the next 22 days open for bond sales.
Yep, we fully understand.
Okay, great. I'm just wanting to make sure I was clear.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks. So given the change in meetings logistics because of the public health concerns, we notified the public of the opportunity to send in comments via email prior to the meeting. We have not received any comments. The schedule for the next meeting, we will set a date, and once it's determined and finalized, we will post it on the webpage and share it with you. And finally, I would like to ask if there's any further business from anyone. If not, I would like to request a motion to adjourn.
Dr. Samakia, could I just express my thanks to Prag and the Goldman Sachs team and our own team at New York Creates as well, because I think the refinancing, as everyone knows and has expressed at previous board meetings, is critically important to our organization, and I think everyone from Prag, Goldman Sachs, and our own team internally is working tremendously hard and well together in times that none of us have ever seen and hopefully we'll never see again to try to bring this thing to closure. So I just want to express my own appreciation for all the work that's going on in the midst of everything else that's happening out there.
Absolutely, and thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you, Kristen. I completely agree. This is Christine Chung, and I would like to join in your remarks.
So at this time, I'll make your motion to adjourn, Dr. Samakia.
Thank you. Second?
Second, Franklin.
Thank you, Franklin. I now declare the meeting is adjourned.